Thank you for joining us. My family and I started Bring Change to Mind 10 years ago to end the stigma and discrimination surrounding mental illness. Our mission was simple: to start the conversation. We've worked to promote open conversation ever since. From depression to bipolar disorder to post-traumatic stress, mental illness affects 1 in 4 adults and 1 in 5 children. We simply need to talk about it, dispel ignorant, destructive myths, and create empathy. Too many people are afraid to seek help. Bring Change to Mind creates safe and stigma-free peer-to-peer high school clubs where students learn about mental health, to listen and support each other, and are given the tools for self-care and wellness. Over the coming weeks and months, students will be reintegrating with their peers and returning to campuses for the first time in 14 months. We can help them and ourselves by listening without judgment, by starting and continuing courageous, supportive conversations in our home and with our friends. Tonight's discussion is an opportunity to address how mental health intersects with other critical issues that face our society. You will hear authentic and candid conversations. Our goal is to show that everyone deals in one way or another with mental health because we're human. My family and I have learned that where there is conversation, there is hope. For being with us tonight, thank you.
Hi there. I'm Alan Stewart, co-founder of Thieves, and most days we're selling socks and underwear, so it really is an honor to be able to switch gears for a sec and focus on such a meaningful campaign with Bring Change to Mind for Mental Health Awareness Month. A few years back, friends of mine lost their son to suicide, and Paige was your typical perfect 17-year-old with a great family and good grades and a loving group of friends. And yet somehow even he didn't feel like he could talk to anybody. And that must have been incredibly lonely. And out of sadness and honestly frustration and determination, we created these Never Alone socks. And people dug them. We gave them out at high schools, we sold thousands online and donated the profits, and started a ton of conversations around mental health. Nothing we can do can bring Paige back, and that feels horrible. But his family's hope is that their story can be the difference of at least one person getting the help they need way before it's too late. And that's why Thieves is really excited to be here and sponsor the conversation series. It's yet another step in erasing the stigma that we all have to be okay all the time. We don't, and we shouldn't. My hope is that the panel you're about to watch will inspire you to open up with somebody you care about, or even a stranger. So we all know that we are never, ever, ever alone. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. I'm Justin Baldoni, filmmaker, co-founder of Wayfarer Studios, and author of my new book, Man Enough, Undefining My Masculinity, Shameless Plug. If you didn't know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And today we're here with Bring Change to Mind, a national organization working to end the stigma and discrimination surrounding mental illness, to discuss men and mental health. 2 words that you don't often hear together. In other words, all the external limitations and the boundaries around masculinity, vulnerability, and how and when, or even if we decide to talk about mental health and our internal feelings. And today, I am so happy to be joined by a group of men who are absolutely man enough to speak about their internal lives. So first of all, we have Emmy and Grammy and Tony Award winner, Billy Porter. What's up, my man?
Hey, how are you?
So good to see you. We got my dear friend Matt McGorry, an actor, an activist, a feminist dedicated to racial justice and gender equity. And as an actor, you know him from his roles in Orange is the New Black and How to Get Away with Murder. And you might have even seen him on the first season of our show, Man Enough, when we sat down and talked about our feelings. Matt, what's up, baby?
Hey, buddy. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
And we have Solomon Thomas, defensive tackle for the Las Vegas Raiders and Bring Change to Mind ambassador. He's in Las Vegas, but he's in AC. What's up, my man?
What's up, Justin? Thanks for having me on, man.
Oh, so happy you're here. And last but not least, my friend Chase Stokes, who is also a Bring Change to Mind ambassador and such a good guy. Chase, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing all right, man. Thanks for having me.
So happy you're here. All right. Also, big shout out to People for co-hosting this event and bringing us all together. Limited definitions of masculinity have created a shame in many of us men when it comes to asking for help. I think this is something we've been raised with. It's a part of the man box and this patriarchal culture that we live in. So I want to know from anyone who wants to talk first, how has this shown up in your own lives and in your own mental health?
For me, I've worked through a lot of it in my late 30s, early 40s. Well, in my 30s, really, because I was bankrupt. The world had presented a space for me where there was no other option for me but to ask for help, which I think sometimes that's how we learn, when there is no other option. So I learned how to ask for help in that way. I am married now recently. It's been another layer of asking for help when you're in an intimate relationship. When you're in a marriage, that's also the most vulnerable space that you can be in. And, I've been learning how to be vulnerable with my partner so that we can have the best relationship possible. So, I think there's an awareness. Once there's an awareness that there's an issue, one must just take a leap and try it. It's such a habit. It's such a behavioral habit.
Billy, do you feel like there's a lot of unlearning you got to do in the process?
Yeah.
So it's like in real time, you might need to ask for help, but there's like this part of you that just goes, nope, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. Do you feel like you're having a fight and pull it out of you sometimes?
Yeah, I know that it's a fight. It feels very, very much like a fight sometimes. I just had a really complicated conversation with my husband today, and I'm just so grateful that we can now. We used to not be able to. I think, I know for myself, the quarantine and us just being together all day, every day, I think it's like for a lot of relationships, it was either like sink or swim. Sink or swim. You're either going to be or you're not.
Solomon, I see you nodding your head like you got something. You feel this a lot. What are you saying?
Oh no, I just hear him saying with the relationship, like it's a lot when you're with your intimate partner for all day, every day. Like it's new levels of boundaries. You have to learn to be a whole new level of vulnerable. And so no, I hear Billy what he's saying completely. But like with my own journey with my mental health and me asking for help, similar with Billy, I got to a place where I didn't have a choice. I lost my sister to suicide in 2018. That's why I started to speak about mental health. That's why I started trying to raise the stigma against mental health. And I did that before addressing my own mental health. And as a man, as a football player, I thought I had to be tough for my mom and dad. I thought I had to be tough for everyone around me. And I thought that being tough was just me pushing through. Like, I'm okay, I'm straight. Like my whole life I've had it figured out. Like I was a great player in high school, great player in college. Like I'm straight. And then it got to a point where I kept suppressing, pushing down my emotions. My depression got real bad. I got to a place where it was harder to live than it was to not be here. And once I realized that, and once I was in that dark of a place, I was like, man, screw it, I need help. And then once I finally got up for help, it changed my life. And while doing all this, I was preaching to people, get help, be vulnerable. While myself, I wasn't doing that because of the stigma that I've been raised and the stigma that we live in as men. And so that's just my mission and my goal today is to teach men that, to be a man isn't to be tough or to be strong, man. To be a man, I stole this from Obama, is to be a good human being. And then being vulnerable is true strength because we can go on every day and be like, I'm strong, I'm tough, I got it, like I'm good. But that is easier than to be like, hey, no, I'm feeling sad today. No, I'm actually depressed. Like, I can go to my girlfriend and we have that type of relationship where I can be like, baby, I'm feeling really off today. I'm feeling sad or depressed. Like, I need some extra love today and stuff like that. And that's how we communicate and encourage each other. So that's just what I'm trying to take my life and give it to other people so they can learn from that. So they don't have to go to that dark place, because sometimes people don't come back from that dark place. That's the end of it. So I'm trying to make sure people know to get help it's out there. I encourage you to do it. It's amazing. It can change your life. So that's just my story, mental health, and my story of getting help.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing the place that you were in. It's a hard thing to acknowledge that you were advocating on behalf of mental health while also silently suffering. And kudos to you for bringing that up. And Chase, my man, I know we actually had a text exchange not too long ago.
Yeah.
You're, about you even being in it. And I really appreciated that you had the strength to even kind of say, hey, man, I'd love to talk sometime. And that's something as men that we're not really trained to do.
Right.
So what are your feelings around that? Because I think you're one of the youngest amongst us.
Yeah.
Spring chicken.
I am. And it's been a whirlwind of I guess 2 years now in my career. And it feels like with every high that I've hit, there's been a drastic low. My grandmother, who was a major component of my life growing up, my parents got divorced when I was really young. She passed away right as I had booked, the show that I'm working on. And so it was this weird counterproductive experience where I didn't know how to process death, nor did I feel like I had a space to process it, because I was so scared of the fear of failure with work. And so I just had this mentality of saying, I'm just going to work through it. I'm going to work through it. And then I was in a 10-year relationship that ended while I was working as well. So that was another sort of drastic change. And then as the show came out, we all went into quarantine, and that changed everyone's life. And 3 days after the show released, my cousin had overdosed. And I kind of went through a very tumultuous period of time there. And then things, the quarantine happened, and we all had to experience what are we going to do, looking internal versus externalizing everything. And then was fortunate to go back to work. And I did it throughout the pandemic. And then I got back to LA, as I was texting with Justin about. And within the span of a week, 6 days, actually, I lost one of my closest friends to cancer. And then my uncle passed away 2 days ago from cancer as well. So with every high I've experienced in this short period of time in my career, it's been immediately balanced with something very intense. And I have hit serious lows through this and had questions of my sanity, been concerned with my stability, and I didn't know how to ask out. I didn't know how to reach out for help initially. And I ended up going into therapy. It was the best thing that I could have ever done for myself. And it's an ongoing battle, I think, which is the most important thing for me to constantly remember is every day is going to be different. Don't try to pretend like you've got a grip on yourself, because it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to not feel okay sometimes. And I just can't stress enough that it's an ongoing journey. And I'm glad now that I'm learning more because I did speak up and ask for help. And the help that I've gotten through Bring Change to Mind and people like you, Justin, and other people in my life who have stepped up has been, it's been life-changing. So that's kind of my journey.
Thank you for sharing that, man. I'm so sorry about your family.
Yeah.
We'll have our personal chat after this.
Yeah.
But, I admire your bravery and talking about it even publicly with this group of guys. I think it's a beautiful thing. Matt McGorry, you are such an example to me of somebody who is so fearlessly dedicated to working on oneself and taking that shame and pulling it out of that like dimly dark lit basement of our hearts, right? And exposing it to the sun. Get it out. I want to ask you, man, do you think there's diagnoses as men that whether it's depression or bipolar disorder or whatever it is, do you think there are diagnoses that are more acceptable or okay for us men to talk about than others? Are there things that you think we as men struggle with that we're just embarrassed that we just will never be able to tell anybody? I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I appreciate the question and I appreciate the affirmation. I just want to say I appreciate everyone on the call bringing their vulnerable and authentic selves. It's really beautiful and it feels very nourishing. So thank you for that. Yeah, I think, right, like as men, like there's really only one emotion that we're allowed to express, and that's anger. And even for most of us, we're not necessarily right. There's a difference between expressing anger and naming it, right? And sort of the angry expulsion of emotion onto someone else versus saying, as I even said yesterday to someone in my life, I'm feeling really angry right now. I think I need to pause this conversation. So I think that it's a relatively new thing that we're opening up the space to talk about all these different complex layers of emotions, right? And something that I have struggled with for a long time is body image, right? We know actually that anorexia is the deadliest mental illness, and actually it's less prevalent among men. But for men that do have it, they're actually more likely to be fatal because we're less likely to be talking about it and also to be diagnosed by it with it, right? And so, for me, that had been a long struggle, and our industry, obviously, we've normalized a lot of different things, right? In superhero movies, you see, men being made fun of for their bellies, or even in animated like children's movies, men being made fun of for their bellies in ways that we at least consciously know that we shouldn't do about women now, even though obviously the greater effects of it is still more on women. And I think for me, it's about part of it has been about understanding where the external and the internal is, right? So, for example, disordered eating does not exist in a vacuum, right? And part of my personal motto, that's also the motto of the social impact and creative company that I co-founded with my friend J. Love Calderon, is personal transformation towards collective liberation, right? So I recognize that many of the things that I'm struggling with, and especially those with less privilege are struggling with, are created in a larger systems, right? So, for example, anti-fatness, right, or fat phobia. My body images don't spring up out of nowhere magically, right? It's in a culture that hates that, and so even I have to recognize that, right? Eating disorders among people in larger bodies is actually more common than people in smaller bodies, and it's half as likely to be diagnosed. And so for me, it's about both unlearning the internalized parts of it, recognizing where it comes from, and then also simultaneously working to dismantle those systems so that I can provide my healing for myself. But also for me, part of healing is being able to heal my community, heal the world, and heal people who are suffering from the same things and or multiple versions of that based on other marginalized identities.
Thank you. I also have struggled with body images, which I dig into in the book a bit. We've had some good chats about it. Billy, I got a question for you. How do you think that we as men can break out of the limited scope of masculinity that's kind of enforced on us at an early age? Because you seem like you've broken free in so many ways. And I just know, being in your presence, I'm like, I feel freer. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are around that.
Once again, I can only speak of my own journey. And I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. From the moment I could comprehend thought, my masculinity was in question. I just finished my book last week, by the way. So, and I talk a lot about the messaging that we receive that people don't even really realize is messaging. It's like I was 5 years old. I was in kindergarten and I was going to a psychologist after kindergarten every Wednesday because my family sent me to a psychologist after kindergarten because for some reason, They were uncomfortable with my mannerisms. At 5, it's like it is so ingrained. It is so, as we've, systemic. It's so, the infrastructure is so, we don't even think about it. So it's like there has to be these conversations so that an awareness can exist. You can't change the thing until you name the thing. So it's personal, and I think the more conversations that we have like this, the more people like us who sort of step forward and speak about it. Being in show business, it's like I spent the first 25 years of my career just trying to be masculine enough in somebody else's eyes so that I could eat. Just so I could eat. It's like I'm just walking down the street and I'm being called a faggot. I open up my mouth and speak in complete sentences and I'm called a faggot. Like, I don't have to do anything but show up. And I am berated with that word. Before I even knew what it meant, I was being called that word. Before the people who were calling me it knew what it meant, I was that word. It's like, it's from the inside out. It has to start within. Whatever the change is, has to start within. Be the change that you want to see. I finally looked at myself and was like, well, nobody believes that I'm masculine enough to work in a masculine role. That's clear. So why am I even bothering? Why am I even bothering? I'm sick of begging people to see me who have no intention of ever seeing me. So I'll see myself. And myself is this. And this is what I'm going to present. And this is who I am. And if you don't like it, move. Just move out of the way. Just move out of the way. I'm not trying to put I don't have an agenda other than my own mental health, because y'all ain't going to drive me crazy. I've seen crazy. I've seen it happen. I've seen it overtake. I've seen people's mental health just be shattered by outside forces and energies, and so if there's one thing that I could say is like, how do we get internal? How do we start the healing process from the inside of ourselves? Because that's the only way it sticks. That's the only way it's real. It's in my experience, the only way that it ever got real was when I got real with myself and was like, I just can't do this no more. And I'm not.
Wow.
And I can't even imagine, because I'm gay. So the assumption is when you're gay that you're not masculine. That's the whole thing. So when I took the requirement of masculinity off of myself, I don't care anymore. I don't care. And I'm healthier and I'm freer. And like everything opened up. Everything opened up in my life. The very thing that everybody told me was my liability. My queerness is my liability. My femininity is my liability. Being in touch with that. The minute that I let all of those expectations go, my professional life exploded. And it was like, oh, okay. Well, if there's a lesson that I can spread around this world, is authenticity is the only thing that you can be. It's all we can do for ourselves. The greatest gift you can give yourself.
It's so interesting. While our experiences are so different, I absolutely relate also to yours. And it just kind of feels like for all of us men, if masculinity or the patriarchy is the bird cage, we're the birds inside of it. We all just want to be set free. And that looks like whatever the hell kind of bird we are, we should be allowed to be. And we got to be allowed to fly because we're not flying right now.
As a collective, we are not. I am personally, but as a collective.
So Matt, you go ahead, jump in, buddy.
Yeah. So, it's been a while since I've had human interactions, quarantine. I think what Billy's talking about reminds me of a quote by my favorite author, Bell Hooks, an amazing Black feminist author, writes about feminism. And she talks about men are allegiance to patriarchy as being soul murder. And it's a very strong way of saying it, but that is what it felt like for a long time, right? This allegiance, whether it's inside yourself or trying to fit in with other people, it is the antithesis of integrity, both with who we authentically are and who we want to be in the world, right? When we are silent with other men or when we're silent against systems of oppression as they continue to exist, it is eroding the very fabric of our integrity, which is, I think, for me, the spiritual and fundamental basis for who I am as a human being is based on that truth and authenticity. So what Billy was saying really resonated there. And, I want to say too, like I had again, I'm always, me, the personal is so important, and I always try to bring the systemic in mind as well. I've been in therapy for over half my life. I'm very lucky in that way, very privileged in that way. There's this one quote that sticks out, rich kids go to therapy, poor kids go to jail. As my work towards the collective healing as an abolitionist, right, it's about recognizing that, particularly obviously under this system for Black and brown people and particularly poor Black and brown folks, that the options to share, right, like the interpersonal option to share may or may not exist depending on the resources available in your community, right? And so I fight for a world not just in which we feel empowered to share, right, but that there are resources available, right? Like, what is the world we're building where school counselors is more popular than school police, right? Where unhoused people, have resources and homes, because again, I think so many of these issues, and particularly as a white cis man, right, I need to recognize that, the way that the system treats me, I need to be healing myself in the system. But part of the accountability, the loving accountability, is like, how do I shift the world so that everyone has the resources, right? Internally, but also externally, so that when people do express, hey, I'm struggling with this, or instead of being criminalized for mental illness, people who don't have that resources can actually have access rather than relying solely on the individual too.
Thank you, Matt. It reminds me of you brought up Bell Hooks, and I want to go to Solomon here. There's another quote from Bell Hooks. She says that at some point in our lives, every young boy engages in a psychic act of self-mutilation, where we effectively cut ourselves off from our own feelings. We repress them so deeply because we are so afraid of being otherized and being called, as Billy said, gay. You can say that. Or even a girl, which again, right? So Solomon, I mean, look, you're, as an athlete, probably the best athlete wherever you went. I don't know how tall you are, but I imagine you're a pretty big dude. You've probably at some point or another had to engage in that psychic act of cutting yourself off from your feelings. And I'm just wondering how you got yourself back from that.
Definitely. And as an athlete, it was extremely tough, because we're taught mental toughness is to push through something, is to, block out everything and just tell yourself, go, go, go. And I carried that onto my emotional side of my life, but I really only needed that in my physical side of my life, because on my emotional side, I need to be in touch with my emotions. I need to feel them. I need to feel my anger. I need to feel my sadness. Those are important. Being angry and sad is just as important as being happy and joyous. Like, we in our society, we teach people like you're a burden to someone if you're sad or something. That's not true, because we all feel these feelings. Like, it's so important to be in touch with all of our emotions. And that's why I try to tell people is that you're feeling your feelings for a reason. So it's important to honor them so you can sort through them, so you can be free and be clear with yourself. And so that happened after I started going to therapy, when I started realizing, hey, like I have so much anger inside of me from losing my sister, from the situation that happened to everyone, and I need to sort through this anger. And it helped me be free. Sorting through my silence helped me be free. And it took work, it took practice. I'm not perfect at it at all. Like, I work on it every day. And I just want to appreciate some things Matt said about how, body image issues. As an athlete, I think athletes struggle with body image issues more than people would ever think so. Everything in our job, in our life, is about our body. How much we eat or drink, how much we sleep. Every time I remember there was times in college and high school, I wouldn't look in the mirror because I was just like, I do all this work. Why am I not looking perfect? Why am I not looking like an actor or something like that? Like, and I wouldn't look in the mirror, and I would just like get sad if I saw myself. And it took me until I was 25. I write down every day in my journal. I said I love myself unconditionally. No matter what I see in the mirror, I'm like, I love him. Like, I love that. And that took me so long to do, but it's so important to teach that and to understand as men, we can have body image issues, and it's important to sort through them and look through them. And I've experienced as an athlete, and I know a lot of athletes deal with that, and it's not talked about. So I really appreciate you, Matt, saying that. But yeah, so that's yeah.
Thank you, Solomon. I relate to that as well. I think it's interesting, when you get men together like this, it doesn't matter how different our experiences are. It seems like we all have this common thread of not being allowed to be or feel what we feel or who we are. So I want to ask you, Chase, because I know we've had some talks about this, and maybe you could each answer this question. But if you could go back in time, what would you say to your younger self? Billy, maybe it's your 5-year-old self who's having to go to therapy because your family doesn't like your mannerisms, or whatever the age it is. What would you say to yourself? Because I think that that's going to be so important for the young guys who are watching this.
Finally being able to accept that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. So there's been so many moments in my life, and I'm sure you guys can all relate to this as well, where society tells you you should be fine, or the moments that you're having great moments, and for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's being a product of divorce or coming from, kind of a roller coaster of a childhood with, some of the things that I went through as a young kid and what I saw, that I didn't have to be okay, that I am able to feel my emotions, that I'm allowed to cry if I need to feel like I'm crying. And I never really understood that. I was always programmed in an environment, Solomon, kind of like you said, I grew up playing sports, to where you use your emotions to move you forward through life. Use the negative emotions and make something out of it. Push yourself into a place that you've never been, whether it's physically or in whatever capacity. And I didn't really understand who I was as a young man till probably the last 2 to 3 years, where I've been forced to go internally and discover who I am and figure that out. So I think at 16, as an angry kid who's trying to understand why now I've dealt with, my second divorce at a young age, in my family, and having to step up as the oldest in a household and try to help my mom out in any way possible, that it's okay to be frustrated at the situation, that it's okay to feel angry, that it's okay to not be okay at times. And not every day the sun is going to come out and shine and we're all going to smile and, run into the sunset. It's just, we're programmed as men so often to be told to step up, that in moments of crisis, that it's our job, it's our masculine responsibility to be the man of the household. And I started that at 16. And I wish I could go back and say, it's all right, man, you're never going to be prepared for this. You're never, ever, there's not a, to-do book or a how-to step up in an environment, or how to understand your emotions, or how to not be angry at your parents for putting you in a circumstance. And I think that's what I tell myself, that it's okay to not be okay sometimes.
Billy, what would you tell yourself as a young boy?
I would tell the little boy to try to block out the noise. You know, search for understanding how to block out the noise. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise coming from a lot of bullshit things. You know, and if you can just block out the noise, you can see the truth. It's hard to see the truth with the noise. It's hard to feel the truth with the noise. You know, I look at these kids today and it's like, this social media thing, I don't know what. I mean, it's a whole new level of crazy. You know, it's a whole new level of intensity. Just in terms of like what our kids are exposed to and what they have to deal with, what as kids, you know. And so I block out the noise. Find a way to start with blocking out the noise so that you can hear the truth.
I would tell my young self, you know, be authentic and be you. You know, I would tell myself I'm beautifully made the way I am. I'm unique, and just be that person. Because, like Billy said, in the social media age of society, where all we do is compare or see something, want to grab it, like I will not be happy. I will not be free. I will not be fulfilled unless I live my true self, my true life. And I would tell that little kid, I would tell him to hold his smile, hold it strong, and love himself to death. Because at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. That you're not gonna be able to receive love or feel love if you can't love yourself. So, and I just really appreciate what Chase said about it's okay to not be okay. I would tell myself that too, because that's being human. Like, to understand that it's okay to not be okay is normalizing mental health and normalizing being human, because mental health is inevitable in all of us. We're all going to feel all these emotions, whether it's anxiety, depression, sadness, anger, awkwardness, whatever it is, we're going to feel these emotions. So we might as well normalize feeling them so we can all sort through them, so we can all talk about them, we can all be vulnerable and grow together and have a healthy society. So that's what I would tell myself. And yeah, I mean, I just love all the message everyone's saying. I appreciate y'all for real. So thank you.
Ditto.
Matt?
Yeah. What a pressure. A lot of great things have been said. You know, I think I would offer myself the idea that I should center social justice in my life. You know, I think that for me, I know that has been the root of my spirituality, which has sustained me, which has been the bedrock of my ability to feel purpose and to feel like that's moving me forward, and to understand that through that lens, right? Like, trying to win in the ways that I'm told that I should try to win as a man will lead me to an unhappy life, right? And I think even like 6 years ago, when I sort of began activism, I was really I had won in a lot of the ways, right? I'd won bodybuilding competitions, powerlifting competitions. My career was taking off. I had money, but there was a sense of emptiness there, because I was trying to win in the way that this society tells me to win. And I wasn't able to really crack that open until I was able to see the different lenses, to see how white supremacy, patriarchy, capitalism, and all these things really impacted me. So trying to win in an oppressive system, as opposed to winning in my own way, and sort of parsing apart my deepest truth, and then moving from there. I think that's the message. I probably have to break it down for my 15-year-old self, but I feel confident I can do it.
Well, thank you guys so much, Billy, Solomon, Matt, and Chase. You are such examples of what it means to me to be man enough. And huge thanks to Bring Change to Mind and Glenn Close and people for making this conversation possible. And if you're watching this, take Billy's advice and drown out the noise. And, really think about that. And, I just think it's important. There's a lot of noise going on in the world right now. look for your voice, right? Look for yourself. And in that, remember that who you are as you are is enough. You don't got to be any more than you already are. You're a bird trapped in a cage, and it's time for you to fly. And I appreciate you all for being here and being such examples. God, I wish I had the examples like you growing up. And I cannot wait to see this next generation, specifically of young boys and men, grow up to challenge the system and be the best versions of themselves. I appreciate you all, and thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thank you.
You guys.
Love you.
It's great to hang out with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Zach Williams, and thank you for joining us. I'm a board member of Bring Change to Mind and a mental health advocate. I came to this work after I lost my father. I really struggled with his death. It is so important to talk about mental health and to end stigma. I encourage you to join us in having open and honest conversations about mental health. It can be simple. Ask a family member, friend, or neighbor how they are doing. Listen without judgment. Share your own story and be vulnerable. Everyone can be a part of this movement of change. Let's talk about mental health and save lives. Visit bringchangetomind.org to get involved. Thank you.
Thanks to everyone for tuning in to Conversations with Bring Change to Mind on such an important topic. I'm Dan Wakeford, the Editor-in-Chief of People. Almost all of us know or love someone affected by mental illness or have dealt with it ourselves. Bring Change to Mind and People's Let's Talk About It initiative, which I launched in October 2019, is the perfect partnership because we share a common goal: to destigmatize this sensitive topic, to provide resources about where to get help, and to offer support to help anyone in need. I believe in the power of storytelling, touching people's hearts and opening their minds. I wanted to shape our campaign around stories from regular folks as well as celebrities who have dealt with mental illness. People's Alliance with the Crisis text line has also helped hundreds in their time of need. If you or someone you know need mental health help, text STRENGTH to the Crisis text line at 741 741 to be connected to a certified crisis counsellor. Just talking about how you feel helps. In other words, saying, let's talk about it, can be a powerful first step to healing.